For longtime fans of the CRPG genre, most will remember the great decline in new games of this particular style between the early 2000s to the mid-2010s. That real-time with pause party-based CRPG goodness a la Baldur's Gate or anything based off the Infinity Engine or something like that has been vacant. Fans were ravenous in this particular niche genre were finally given some recognition with Kickstarter and the back-funded production of Pillars of Eternity. Many hope-felt wishes had been made true, but most notable would revolve around the stronghold of the player character that they could take control of. It would take almost a year with the release of the second and final expansion of White March before content was added to flesh out this area with more options for quests to send the companions staying there on, and a fairly robust new quest line taking place against a rival that wanted the keep for himself. Unfortunately for many, it may have been a little too late, as several people that I personally talked to would never give the series another chance after the launch, which is a shame as it now sits in the more feature-robust state, and that's the version of Pillars of Eternity I'm going to be reviewing today. But before we dive too far down this rabbit hole, remember to like and subscribe for more content. Let's go ahead and dive in.
You must be one of the new settlers. Welcome to Gilded Vale. You'll be pleased to know that we've had some recent vacancies here.
The story of Pillars of Eternity is really an interesting, chilling tale of an apocalypse. In a fantasy setting, children are being born and they're called Hollowborn. These soulless beings are just husks of flesh without thought of action. I find it funny that ciphers, or soul doctors as you can come to think of them, have been struggling to find a cure for the Hollowborn, even going as far as transferring the souls of animals into the children themselves. Needless to say, this isn't a solution other than if you want to teach your boy how to play fetch. This Hollowborn affliction is so evident even by the first few hours of the game as the player characters wanders into the first village and you can see the devastation of not having children has wrought, with most flocking to one major city in the region for hopes that someone there in that collective can find a cure. For many, the story might be why so many noted that all things seemed so super serious in dialogue interactions, and there isn't a lot of witty side quests or banter other than the occasional word sparring going on with your companions. For me, I found the more grounded approach really allowed me to sink into what decisions I would make as the hero. I really felt the weight of my actions, although, truth be told, there wasn't many times to put this on full display, and most of it revolved around the factions that I decided to team up with or oppose. Gameplay. I think it is best to start with the system that Obsidian went with on Pillars of Eternity. Like Bojangles Biscuits, it was made from scratch. Deciding not to model itself after the D&D systems in place from previous titles they had worked on, like Neverwinter Nights 2, I think that this decision was fine, and after spending some lengthy amount of time playing with it, I kind of like it. It's a D100 system that implements some interesting thoughts into the to-hit category with grazes, hits, and crits, and enchanted equipment that can manipulate those categories. To veteran RPG players, the system isn't overly complicated, but to the mass market, which this game tried to appeal to, I think it held a little too much spice. And while I'm sure as a creator they overlooked these small nuances, it really cost them in the end. As for the gameplay inside the game, it's stellar. Easy to click spells, abilities, with its UI locations, a nice AI for your companions to follow on engagements, which was added later but is there now, and some key ingredients that make the combat feel proper, with abilities for your tank to actually be a tank and hold back several attackers at once while your casters go buck wild. I can't begin to stress how this makes the gameplay feel more distinct and robust with that one simple change from the older game systems like Neverwinter Nights where your tank really wasn't a tank. But I digress. Dungeons & Dragons in that version didn't have a proper tank to carry over to video games at the time of that rule set. While I found the class systems well defined and you felt like you were playing a wizard or a barbarian or a cleric, the talent system just seemed to be an afterthought with very little effort put into it. Either you were athletic, or you could sneak, or you were very knowledgeable about ancient artifacts with lore. While I don't fault the system, it didn't wow me. That's really the only major negative I had to the gameplay. Otherwise, everything felt fine. The targeting system, the spellcasting, and even the standard combat was all really well done. Music. The soundtrack for Pillars of Eternity hits a lot of the right notches when it comes down to atmosphere. Justin Bell has worked on a lot of game series, including a short piece done in Fallout New Vegas. Also, it helps when you have an orchestra to back it up, and that's exactly what they went and did when it came down to music design. And one of the better composed soundtracks on video games that might sometimes get overlooked. Here's a short snip of just the title theme, and I think just from this you can get a lot of the feel that Pillars went for, but personally to me it invokes a really large sense of wonder. While I enjoyed the new varied classes like Cypher and the spin on the old D&D system converted to a D100, I also found that because of the ability to dip into other class designs and take a small part from it, like the Mage Magic Missile or the Healer's AoE heal, I found that it was very similar to my thoughts on current MMO games, in particular like World of Warcraft, where everyone has a heal ability. It starts to cheapen the experience and make certain classes seem less niche and important to play. I also found that the two systems revolving around the use of fatigue and hit points to be actually pretty interesting. While there are many abilities to restore fatigue in a fight, the limit that before you're knocked out, the restrictive outlet for actual hit point restore made for an interesting dynamic to play out when you were dungeon diving. Depending on the level of difficulty, resting could be restricted by use of the consumable good purchased at an inn. I think it's also important to note that the enchanting and crafting system felt very robust. Also, the decisions of maximizing a particular weapon just came down to finding one I really liked and using the enchant system to get the most out of it. But it did have a caveat. Almost always it trivialized the weapons I found later. The combat felt rewarding. Once I really started to get a feel for the spells and abilities of each monster or the class they were mimicking, it became automatic for how I would go about dismantling them. As I stated before, tanks felt like tanks and mages felt like mages, and you could use those to your advantage. If we look back at the decades of CRPGs, especially real time with pause, Pillars of Eternity scratched an itch the right way, and even several years later, it's just a great title to spend some time exploring. Well, that's it for my review. I hope you liked it. Remember to like and subscribe for more content like this. I'll see you on the next one. Have a great day gaming. Later.